Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Cremando for YogaUOnline, and I'm here today with a good friend of ours, James Knight, creator of Gentle Somatic Yoga. James holds advanced study certifications in Hana Somatic Education, core energetics, brainwave biofeedback massage therapy, and multiple yoga methodologies. He's been a movement educator and therapist since 1990. I know that he teaches all over the world, and he's a super busy teacher. He has been a presenter at conferences for the International Association of Yoga Therapists and a guest teacher for yoga and yoga therapy programs such as Inner Peace Yoga, Maryland University of Integrative Health, and Sonoma State University. So James, welcome. It's wonderful always to speak with you. I'm kind of going to put you on the spot, though.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Before, talking with you, I did something I haven't done in a while. I looked at your website and I thought, oh, what's James saying about himself these days? And I'm just going to read this paragraph that's right off of your website.
Okay.
Age 17, I was recruited to be a high fashion model because of my appearance, but this career left me feeling empty inside. I felt I wasn't contributing anything of real value to others, and my soul yearned to express in a more meaningful way. As a result, I've spent years dissolving limiting beliefs and images that I placed on myself and others. The reason that paragraph really jumped out at me is because I think you are speaking the story. I think you are telling the story of so many people who walk around and they're vaguely unhappy and they vaguely feel like, maybe they're wearing the wrong skin, doing the job in the wrong relationship, but they haven't really sorted that out and they're just going through their day and every interaction. So I'm that person in a job that doesn't make any sense to me, that isn't fulfilling me, that I don't feel like I'm earning my carbon footprint. And I haven't figured that out. So every interaction that I have with every person, with every transaction, with everything I'm doing in my life has that as an undertone, that I vaguely in the wrong place. I think that story is a really common story. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because you unraveled that story for yourself using somatics, and then you kind of dedicated yourself to helping other people do that. So I just wanted to have you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Boy, it's really bringing me back. Yeah, I was in a really unusual and beautiful situation. It happened so quickly. I was quite young. I moved out of the house when I was 17. I grew up, well, in high school, I was in Utah and I wasn't Mormon. So basically I barely graduated high school because my career path was to be a professional baseball player. And I was kicked off the baseball team at 17 because they found out I wasn't Mormon. So it was a real shock. It was like I had trained since I was 6 years old, and that's what I was going to do. And anyway, without going into all of that drama, what it did, I got a fake ID. I became a ski instructor at Snowbird in Utah. And one crazy night at a bar, Elite from New York was looking, it was called the Face of the 80s. This is in the 80s. And they were looking for new talent. And my friends pushed me on stage. I had, imagine this, Lynn, I had a mustache and a bi-level haircut. So that really shows, that will give kind of a sense of my current age. This is a long time ago. And I got up there. I didn't win the contest, but I came in second. And the scout said, hey, you should cut your hair. Long story short, next thing I know, I'm in a commercial, and I'm going to Germany to visit a girlfriend who was an exchange student. And once I got to Munich, I just realized, wow, I really want to stay here. I want to stay longer. And Elite from New York had an office in Munich. And so just innocently, I just walked in one day and said, hey, I know you don't know me, but this is what happened. And they said, wow, you should, if you want to model, you need to get in a train 2 nights and go to Milan and apply to be in the fashion shows, because in the fashion world, in Milan and in Paris twice a year, for the fall and the spring collections, anybody's in fashions in Milan or in Paris. So I was a week late, but a Paris agent found me, discovered me, moved to Paris, and then boom, I became a high fashion model. So it was like, it literally happened overnight.
Runway model?
Everything. Yeah. Print, magazines, catalogs, commercials. Yeah. Had an apartment. They gave me money. It was just a, imagine me coming from Utah. My family has never even been out of the country before, and I was quite young. So it was really interesting. There's a lot of more details, but to get to your question, what happened was I found myself right in the middle of some very interesting people, not only the high fashion designers like Christian Dior, Givenchy, there's just so many top designers that I was a model for, but I also became friends with some of the dignitaries. One of my first partners, former partner, was the Prince of Belgium. So I had that demographic. And also my partner's uncle was the Argentinian ambassador in Paris. So at that age, not only was I in this fashion world, but I was also surrounded by really interesting people. And so being actually at the Prince of Belgium's palace, this is kind of a wild story, and I'm sitting here watching all these really interesting people and kind of like in a heated debate discussion type. I mean, in America, that type of expression might be a little offensive because people are talking with their hands. And I was just sitting there, just drinking wine and eating, going like, how did I get here? You're like, and what am I contributing? Because I had no idea what people were talking about. And there were maids bringing food and wine from the cellar and brandy and, all this stuff. And that was the first time of self-reflection that I can remember where I'm like, who am I beyond this physical person that's being hired because of my looks? How else am I contributing to this environment? So that was my first memory of self-reflection, of asking myself, who am I? And shortly after that, I got kind of depressed. I'll never forget it. I was on a train from Paris to Austria to do a catalog. And at that point, I had a camera. So I took a self-portrait in a mirror at night, smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, who is this person? I still have it. It was a black and white photograph, and I'm smoking the cigarette. And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea who is looking back at me. And I found myself really depressed. I didn't even know what depressed was, but I just thought it was a terrible feeling not to know who this person was. So again, long story short, I decided at some point to go back to the United States and just attempt to go to college so that I can challenge my brain to start thinking, like, wanting to educate myself. And it was very early on, when I was 19, that one of the students went in my cultural anthropology classes, made me a meditation cushion and said, "Hey, James, do you want to go to this 10-day silent meditation retreat?" And I'm like, okay. She made me a zafu. I'm like, all right, I'll go.
Belgium's palace.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know who I am. Meditation sounds like a good idea. I had read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda in Paris. So there was a little bit of like, I wanted to know about the yogis that levitated and, could do those miracle type of things. So it wasn't my consciousness. So when I had the invitation, I'm like, all right, I'll do this. So So it was really such a pivotal point because I was so pissed off, Lynn. I was sitting there with like maybe 100 people, men on one side. This is Vipassana meditation, not a religion, not a dogma. It's a technique that said was I was told that was passed on by Buddha. And it came from him, this meditation technique. And so men were on one side, women were on the other side. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, this is crazy because I was being invited to look, to meditate, but I really witnessed my monkey mind and I was going insane. I mean, literally insane because I realized that I couldn't stop this chatter. And it was, again, this kind of like second wave of self-reflection of going like, what the fuck? Excuse my language, but like, what? Just like, what, just so squirmy and so like agitated, and my body was in pain. And I just remember, Lynn, those first 4 days, I was cussing to everybody in that room, including the teachers. I'm like, why am I here? This is a stupid idea. But I'm pretty intense. I've always been very sincere. Like when I try something, I go all in. And so that fourth day, I received all the Vipassana meditators for a 10-day retreat. You receive a special longer meditation on the fourth day. So I'm sitting there on my Zafu cushion. I feel like my knees are going to pop off. They're going to carry me away in the stretcher. I'm super pissed off. And then all of a sudden, I just kept following the instructions, which are now part of Gentle Somatic Yoga, a soma scan, which is interoception. I mean, later, 35 years later, that's what it ended up being. But I was able to follow the instructions, and all of a sudden, I dissolved into what I would call unity consciousness, where all of a sudden everything, all of myself became one with the universe. I slipped into that state without even knowing it. And when the hour and a half was over, I really thought I wasn't going to be able to stand up. I really thought I was going to be crippled. But then I realized I just stood up, and I'm like this really incredible thing happened to me of like, yoga. I mean, at that time, I didn't realize that's probably one of the stages of samadhi when you enter that unity state of consciousness. So Lynn, that one experience shifted the rest of my life, because I thought, if this is possible to go from this extreme into this blissful state, then I want to learn more about this. And so that is really what I call spirit got me by my butt and wouldn't let go.
Mhm.
Because after that, there was no denying that there was something else that I could access in myself. And then I want to share with you one more thing. At the same time, I was the cultural anthropology class. My teacher invited me to a Native American ceremony. I didn't know that we would be the only white people there. This is in Northern California, way in the mountains, and it was the Acorn Festival. It was around the same exact time, and this is an important part of me understanding that there was more than just the personality. So in this particular ceremony, me and my professor were sitting in the shadows of this roundhouse. It was a dirt floor, ginormous fire going, and people were celebrating the acorns and different foods made from acorns. Back in the day, that's what that part of the world, that's how they sustained themselves during the winter time. And but we were being very humble because we're guests of this only native ceremony. And at the end of dinner, the shaman, dressed in regular clothes, had a huge branch of bay leaves. Bay leaves is like laurel. Some people add them in pastas and herbs, but in Northern California, the bay leaf is very fragrant. It's a leaf that's very fragrant. So he was walking around the circle with this branch, and he stopped right in front of me. And again, we're in the shadows. And he said, I want you, me, James, to lead the first dance. And I remember looking at my professor and then looking at him and looking around going like, what do I do? Like, I don't know what's going on here. Again, I'm only 19, like I'm still coming into myself, kind of like, he just looked me right in the eye and he said, James, he found out my name. He said, you will know, I will show you. So I'm like, okay. So I picked 2 bay leaves. I got in front of this huge, ginormous fire. It was probably like 6 feet tall and wide. And then all the Native Americans were sitting on the edges of the roundhouse. And he had chosen 4 or 5 other people that were behind me. And he taught me this bird dance. And all of a sudden, Lynn, once I started barefoot, and the flutes and the drums started playing, I just entered another state of consciousness later, which I explored, which I'm guessing you'll probably ask me some more questions, but I went into this trance and I just remember looking at all the reflection of all of these beautiful people, the fire reflecting off of people's faces and everybody kind of joining in. And I just thought, Lynn, that was the first time being raised Christian and never feeling religious, even though I went to Bible school and did all the things and Bible camp. I never really had a sense of spirit, but in that moment, I knew there had to be a creator. I knew there had to be source. I knew there had to be a source. And that's what I call it now. Like, that we all come from somewhere else beyond this.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two combinations of having the Vipassana meditation where I dissolved and I got the experience of myself outside my personality, paired with this experience of this, it made sense to me to be barefoot on the earth, dancing around the fire. That's another wave of like, okay, all right, then I want to learn. I want to know what the heck is possible within this shell of a soma.
So somehow, by the way, I'm making a note, get picture of James with cigarette.
I thought you were going to say get a picture of him modeling, not the cigarette.
We talked about the one you took. Get picture of James.
I'll have to find it. I don't know where it is.
Oh,
but
yeah, start looking.
It's like a James Dean, very moody. You'll have to picture it, just kind of like.
So somehow that translated into working with other people in somatic, specifically somatic. So what was it about somatics that it sounds like you're describing a couple of outer body experiences that brought you into your body,
Yes.
that brought you into your spirit or into your soul,
Yes.
or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
So you literally left your body to come back to yourself.
Exactly.
And then
Yes.
you ended up in somatics.
Yes.
So talk about why somatics.
Yeah, actually, this is a very significant time right now. What is it? It's October 7th. 2024, it's the perfect time to ask that question because I was going to school at Sonoma State University, which is north of San Francisco. That's where all this was happening. And I had been an athlete before I was a model. I told you about ski instructing. I was an aerobic instructor. I was a baseball player. So I was very athletically oriented from a young kid. So when I went to Sonoma State, there was a class offered through the psychology department called the Psychology of Yoga. And it was taught by Eleanor Criswell Hanna. And she is the one that created somatic yoga. And so I took it, but it was a psychology class because we do the practice for an hour and then we would talk about the philosophy and the neuroscience for the second. So it wasn't just the physical class. It was more of the process of what yoga is. So I just took her class and I loved it so much. It was my first yoga class. It hadn't even occurred to me to take a yoga class, but I was just curious. So that's how I found yoga. And I started taking it every semester. I didn't mean to, I just was really drawn to do it. And Sonoma State is a very liberal college. It's a small college, or it was like less than 7,000 people. And Eleanor would turn down the lights and, she was a really beautiful, most beautiful, incredible soul and spirit. And I wouldn't say that we became friends because it wasn't the relationship. But one day in the hallway after like the third semester, she asked me if she could talk with me. And I'm like, okay. And I'll never forget it. She just looked me directly in my eyes. And it was like she was looking past my eyes. Like I'll never forget the moment. I was like, she was seeing me. And she said, James, have you considered moving in and learning more about the healing arts? And I was like, no. And she goes, well, I would highly recommend that you start by taking a massage course. And because I'd already been taking somatic yoga, it was right around the year that Thomas Hanna died in a tragic car accident. So this was like in 1990. And so basically what she was saying is, hey, you might consider like learning how to touch a body, learn the physiology, take a massage course, and then eventually then sign up for the certification to become a Hanna somatic educator. Because, it was just at the very beginning of when the first groups were being trained by Thomas's top students, along with Eleanor Criswell, spearheading the whole school. So I just said yes because she saw something in me, and that was an extremely pivotal moment. And the reason why I just shared with you right now that it's significant is that she just passed away recently. And so without her, that was such a pivotal moment for me that she saw me. It changed the trajectory of my life, because from that moment forward, I just wanted to take everything I could in regards to understanding human potential. And so that's why I have so many certifications and so much education, is I really became interested, like, well, what about the emotions, and what about the physical body, and what about the spirituality, and how does this all work? And so for 15 years, I immersed myself while going to college and really educated myself. And that's how I came into somatics.
So you work, I think most of your teaching now is somatics, correct?
Yes.
And how do you use that to help other people? Because not everyone's going to have an outer body experience at a medicine ceremony. Most of us aren't going to have access to that. Most of us are just going to be in our comfortable clothes in class. How does somatics work on people? Is that too big of a question?
No, not at all. It's a great question. It's a practical question because it's neuroscience. So being trained through the Nevada Institute for Somatic Research and Training, that's the school where that's based with Thomas Hanna and Eleanor Criswell. Since then, there are other schools teaching this as well, but this is the hub. This is the roots. This is the foundation. And so the neuroscience of Hanna somatic education. So let's back up just a little bit. The word somatics with an S was coined by Thomas Hanna, and it means experience your body from within first person. And things have changed a lot in the last 30 years. But 30 years ago, and even to this day, we're looking mostly for third person validation. We go to the doctor, we go to the priest, we go to the parent, we go to the politician, like, tell me who, what is this? And Thomas describes somatics as we decide, like, what is inside here. And so the neuroscience of somatics is turning on different parts of the brain so that we can regain voluntary control of our physiology. And you had mentioned some of my other trainings like brainwave feedback and core energetic psychotherapy. And so I became interested in I've had a clinical practice for over 30 years. People came to me. Most people that saw me in my practice were in chronic pain and didn't find relief with traditional scientific other modern, like the Western medical model.
Western modalities, yeah.
And so a lot of my clients would find me because they were at the bottom of the barrel, and they just thought that I might be able to help them. So there is very basic science that we can turn on parts of our brain to self-regulate. And Lynn, I know because you're an educator as well and yoga teacher. So that's learning the neuroscience. And then eventually becoming trained in various styles of yoga, I started experimenting, keeping the neuroscience from Hanna somatic education, blending it with yoga, and bringing in some of these other things that I'm passionate about, meditation and shamanism and energy medicine, quantum physics. And I wanted to figure out how can I help more people at once rather than just 5 people a day in my practice? How can I bring what I know and what works into a group movement class? And that's how Gentle Somatic Yoga was born, as I just started incorporating movement flows that did the same thing that I do on the table one-on-one. I found a way to bring it through somatic movement flows and meditations and things like that.
So if I tie that back to the thing I said in the beginning, because there are people who know that they're in pain.
Yeah.
But there's the other people that I was talking about who might come into a class and realize, kind of as you did in different ways, this is what I was looking for that I didn't know that I was looking for, because I have a hole to fill. I didn't know that hole was there. And it's now explaining a lot of things to me about my relationships, about my interactions, or about my chronic pain that seems to have no source. It sounds like that when you're talking about the work of Thomas Hanna, especially a few minutes ago, what you were saying was it's bringing into you can talk about the top down versus the bottom up. Many people are in their heads.
Yeah.
And they just need to get out of their heads, because their head is the thing that's the problem.
The personality, the ego. Yeah.
Yeah. So somatics is a way where you're not saying, now we are now going to solve the problem of your vague unhappiness with your career. You're saying we're now going to go into your nervous system and open some doors.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Okay. So, Lynn, I love talking with you. I want to share that. I wish I was there with you in person. I'd give you a big old hug, because I feel like we have spiral conversations. So that's where I'm going to go with this for a little bit. So hang in there with me. All of us human beings, maybe even when we're conceived, experience stress and trauma and challenging life experiences. And science has proven that we store this in our tissues, and we also store it in our energy field. And so we have these reflexes. So that means we're not in control. Every human being has these reflexes, which I talk about in my trainings and in my teachings. We're not going to go into that now, but it's a reflex to pain. We want to protect ourselves. So if there was a loud noise right now, if you and I were together and there was a bomb, we would do the same thing. We would protect our heart. We would want to protect our guts. We come into a fetal position. That's just like one example of a reflex. So when I learned core energetic psychotherapy, which is a body-based psychotherapy, every human being has developed defense structures and armoring to survive. And we all have our own story. We all have our own ways of doing that. Some people leave their bodies. Some people go into addiction. Some people get injuries. Some people get into really dysfunctional relationships. Some people overachieve. I mean, there's so many ways that we fight to defend ourselves, to survive what feels like a threat. And that is stored in the tissues. So what I found with using the neuroscience of Hanna somatic education is that when we can release and repattern our muscles and hydrate our fascia and learn to self-regulate our nervous system, then when we start letting go of those defense structures, then our natural state is peace and well-being. It's not something to achieve. It's just been buried and forgotten. And in our work, we call it sensory motor amnesia. We temporarily forget how to voluntarily control, to let go of these stress responses that are totally subconscious. And that's why I also bring in psychology, because Carl Jung called it the shadow. It's the repressed information that we don't want to look at because it's too painful. Well, guess what? You know this, but it's stored in the body. You can see it in people's posture. So a lot of physical pain, stiffness, posture imbalances, if it's muscular related, it can often be undone. And that's what I do with Gentle Somatic Yoga and somatic education, is help retrain and flip on parts of the brain so to release that. So the result is that when we naturally soften and unwind from these subconscious holding patterns, then we do the creativity of the heart, the wisdom of the heart, the wisdom of the gut. Some may call it the spirit. It naturally arises because there's more space for it now. So our authentic self is always there. We might want to call it the higher self or the true self. It's always there, but when the stress leaves, and then there's space for us to remember. It's a process of remembering. It's not a process of achieving. It's a process of creating space. And then the wisdom of the heart arises, creativity, passion, fulfillment. It just starts happening. And so that's what happens in what I see in my trainings and in my work, is that as people dissolve and they let go, they don't even have to know the story. But when the body becomes more free and it's more mobile, then these other parts of self just naturally emerge. We start knowing how to make more nourishing decisions for ourselves. We pick better relationships. We change jobs. We eat differently. I call it somatic intelligence. We all have it, and we just need to make space for it so that we can remember.
So that is very attractive as I would feel really good doing that. But the other bigger picture, I think, is when you're making those healthier choices, when you're self-nourishing, when you're calming your nervous system, when you're paying attention to what's going on in your joints and your myofascial slings and all of that, you age better. And we are totally, the reason I'm bringing that up is because at YogaU, that's like our deal. Our deal is healthy aging and longevity. So this kind of work is not just mood enhancing. It's not just, I feel better, but really it's life enhancing and longevity facilitating. Now, the great news is that you are going to be teaching another series of live interactive courses for us, and you're going to be touching this kind of material. Am I right about yes?
Yes.
James, I just wish you could get a little more enthusiastic about your work.
I'm snapping my fingers right now because recently I've had a physical, and every time I go to the doctor's office, no one can believe my age. And it's a little bit embarrassing because I don't like the attention. I mean, it's a nice compliment, but I'm turning 59 this year and nobody believes me. They're looking for gray hairs. They're like, what kind of procedure? I haven't done anything. This is just all natural.
No Botox.
No Botox, no nothing. But having fun with you, it's like, yes, because we can actually, Thomas Hanna actually wanted to bust the myth of aging. Yes, there's certain things that we need to do as we age, build muscle mass, bone density. But I'm living proof, and I know, Lynn, you are too. And it's like, we can look forward to aging because I call it our wisdom body, which is connected to the heart brain and the gut brain and the whole self. Is that we become wiser because we can listen to our body's messages and we can respond to them sooner than later. Instead of going unconscious, we can actually become more conscious and make generative decisions. So the aging process to me has actually become very exciting because I have more access now to know what's going to add to my life force energy. And I'm not just talking about movement and diet. I'm talking about everything. And it is something to look forward to. Aging is a beautiful process. And yes, we do need to make some adjustments, but man, I have more access now to know what fuels me than I did when I was 20, 30, 40.
So tell me about the, I I can't remember, is it 6 weeks that you'll be doing 6 live stream practices
Yeah.
where people you're talking to you, they can see you, you can see them,
Yeah.
and you're actually guiding a practice.
Guiding a practice. Yeah. The majority is guiding practices. And I feel so grateful and humbled that you guys have invited me back again. I love being part of the community that you've created. I'm feeling emotional because it's really a high honor. So yes, I am. There's different themes for each week. They can be taken standalone or they can be taken consecutively. But what I'm going to be sharing is the techniques that I know and embody and have shared with thousands of other people. And yeah, each class will be a different theme, like fascial unwinding. There's a theme of joint health. I'm going to be,
Nervous system rebalancing, tight
yes.
tight hips.
I have 6 weeks to just deliver the smorgasbord of possible experiences. Because for me, it's like a person has to experience them themselves. It's like I can be the guide and the facilitator, but I really like providing spaces in which people can feel for themselves. Is this true? Does this feel good to me? And that's what I'll be offering over that 6 week series. And it's really like the crest of the wave of everything that I've learned up to this point. So it's just like, it's my biggest joy and passion because I'm just going to be giving all the cherries on the cake that I've been experiencing, especially over this past year. I've been fortunate enough. I spent 6 weeks in a really beautiful community called Ajijic. It's on Lake Chapala, which is the largest natural lake in Mexico. I spent 5 weeks there with a population. The average age was between, I'm going to say 55 and 85. And I was able to witness a culture, expats, living and embodying a lot of the things that I know. And so I kind of went there as a culture anthropologist going, wait a minute. No one's talking about arthritis or about poor digestion or this surgery or heart attacks. Like it was like, so I'm really interested, Lynn, in whole self nourishment. So it's not just the breathing and the yoga and it's like it's looking at all of ourself, all the ways in which we can fuel and bring more life energy in. So back to your question, yeah, over those 6 weeks, I'm going to be being playful. It's neuroscience based, but it's also based on heart wisdom.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited. I'm super excited you're coming back and looking forward to seeing it. And this has been fun.
It has been fun. I never know where I'm going with you, Lynn.
I did not expect to be at an Indian, what was it called? A circle ceremony? Well,
oh, it was Acorn Festival in a roundhouse.
Acorn Festival. Yes, we went to the Acorn Festival together. Always, James.
Oh, yeah.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you. I can't wait to your class.
Yeah, thank you.
There.
Okay, we'll see you there. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Bye-bye.